Welcome to the Highly Sensitive and Strong podcast. I'm Daphne Lee, a former anxiety sufferer turned holistic anxiety coach, mindfulness teacher, mom, and guide for highly sensitive people. Anxiety was part of my life for as long as I can remember, and as a teenager, I was hospitalized for anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia. Since then, I've learned to transform those challenges into strengths, and now I help people like you calm their nervous systems and live in a way that truly honors you. Each week, I'll share honest conversations, insights, and practical tools to help you heal anxiety in your body and mind so you can thrive as your highly sensitive and strong self. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, friend. Have you ever noticed that your mind seems to keep working long after a situation is over? Maybe you replay a conversation from earlier in the day, or you find yourself analyzing something you said, and now you're considering all the ways it could have gone differently. Maybe you're trying to make a decision, and your mind keeps circling through every possible outcome. Or you find yourself lying in bed at night, physically exhausted, but your mind seems determined to keep trying to solve problems that don't actually need solving at 2 in the morning. If you find yourself getting caught in those loops, you're not alone. And if you're highly sensitive, there's a good chance you've spent at least some time wondering why your mind seems to work this way. Overthinking is one of the most common things I hear about from sensitive people, and it's something I've struggled with too, which is why I talk about it a lot. It seems like the default operating mode for my mind is to replay conversations, imagine worst case scenarios, try to anticipate every possible outcome before making a decision. And when it's happening, it feels like I'm trying to help myself. Like if I can just think about something long enough, I'll eventually feel safe or confident in my decision. But that's not usually what happens. Instead, I usually end up exhausted if I let my mind keep going without pausing long enough to come back to myself. Honestly, this has felt especially real to me recently because I had planned for things to look very different this month. I had ideas and projects I was excited to work on, and then I ended up spending 2 whole weeks in bed with a really nasty respiratory virus, and I'm still trying to regain my energy now that the worst of it is over. After spending so much time lying there, unable to do much besides rest and drink hot liquids, I noticed how quickly my mind wanted to get involved. When will I feel better? I'm falling so behind. How am I going to catch up? Shouldn't I be feeling better and doing more by now? Or one of the worst thoughts that has been with me for a long time. What is wrong with me? That one hurts when I notice that it's made an appearance again. This whole process has been another reminder that healing and life don't always unfold according to our plans. Sometimes the mind tries really hard to think its way out of discomfort, uncertainty, and just not knowing. But I find that all that thinking tends to make me feel worse instead of better. So today I want to explore why sensitive minds overthink, not from the perspective that something's wrong with us, but from the perspective that your mind may actually be trying to protect you from pain. And I want to share why mindfulness has become one of the most powerful antidotes I've found, not because it stops our thinking, but because it helps us come home to the present moment when we've wandered too far into the past or the future. For years, I thought I needed to get better at controlling my thoughts, at stopping them, or somehow finding a way to change the kinds of thoughts that arise so I'd have better thoughts. But mindfulness and meditation help me begin to change my relationship with my thoughts and therefore my relationship with myself. Back in the early 1990s, I was getting my degree in Buddhist psychology from Naropa University. And in one of my classes, we were studying Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings from the book Shambhala, The Sacred Path of the Warrior. One of the teachings that really stayed with me was the idea that we spend so much energy dividing our thoughts into good thoughts and bad thoughts. But Trungpa taught that bravery begins when we stop fighting with ourselves. Instead of judging every thought that arises, we can simply notice, oh, that's thinking. Not good thinking or bad thinking, just thinking. And that perspective was incredibly freeing for me because it helped me stop treating my mind like an enemy. These teachings really helped me begin to change my relationship with myself, and it also led me to understand that most overthinking isn't random and it isn't just about thinking too much. It's often fear trying to create safety. Trungpa also said, acknowledging fear is not a cause for depression or discouragement, but a step toward true fearlessness. I came to understand that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's our willingness to keep moving forward even when fear is present. And this was huge for me because this was shortly after the years when my life was completely dominated by fear while I was suffering deeply from panic and anxiety disorder. The bottom line is that your mind is trying to help you. It's trying to prevent mistakes, prevent disappointment, conflict, embarrassment, rejection, and pain. It's trying to make sure you're prepared for whatever might happen next. And the challenge is that the mind often mistakes certainty for safety. And sometimes I wonder if overthinking is really our attempt to escape not knowing, because not knowing can feel so uncomfortable to the nervous system. Not knowing how something's going to turn out, not knowing if we made the right choice, not knowing how someone else feels about us, or not knowing when life will feel steady again. So the mind keeps searching, not because something is wrong with us, but because uncertainty can feel so incredibly vulnerable. And because life rarely offers complete certainty, the mind keeps searching. It's thinking, analyzing, rehearsing, preparing, and looking for answers that may never fully arrive. For highly sensitive people, this can be even more pronounced because we naturally take in more information. We notice subtle details, we think deeply, we often consider multiple perspectives, and we often care a great deal about how our choices affect the people around us. Those qualities can be incredible strengths. But when the nervous system becomes activated, those same strengths can easily turn into overthinking. And underneath that overthinking, there is almost always fear. Fear of getting it wrong, of being misunderstood, of disappointing someone, of losing connection or control, of not being prepared enough. So before we judge our overthinking, it can help to pause and ask, what is my mind trying to protect me from right now? That question alone can soften the way we relate to ourselves. There's another old Buddhist teaching that speaks beautifully to this, and it's the teaching of the second arrow. The first arrow is the painful thing that happens. Maybe someone criticizes you or you make a mistake. Maybe you feel anxious, overwhelmed, disappointed, or afraid. That first arrow hurts, and that's just part of being human. We all experience pain, uncertainty, and moments that sting. But then comes the second arrow. And the second arrow is everything we add on top of the original pain. It's the replaying, the analyzing, the self-criticism, the harsh story about what this means about us and who we are. It's the endless search for what we should have said or done or seen coming. And for many highly sensitive people, this is where overthinking lives. A conversation happens, and then that conversation keeps happening in our minds for the next 3 days. Or you send a message and spend the next hour wondering if it sounded right. Maybe you make a mistake and your mind turns that single moment into a much larger story about your worth. Whatever it is, something uncomfortable happens, and before you know it, you're no longer just dealing with the original discomfort, you're dealing with everything your mind has added on top of it about what that means about who you are. Does that sound familiar? The first arrow may be painful, but the second arrow is often where our suffering grows. And this is why mindfulness matters so much, because mindfulness helps us notice when we've picked up that second arrow. It helps us see the difference between what actually happened and what our mind is adding on top of what happened. That doesn't mean we should blame ourselves for overthinking. It means we begin to recognize the pattern with compassion, to notice, oh, my mind is trying to protect me, and maybe I don't have to follow every thought all the way to the end. One thing I've noticed about us as sensitive people is that we care deeply. We want to do things well. We care about our relationships. We think carefully. We don't want to hurt people. And because we care, the mind often tries to help by working overtime. It says things like, what if I miss something? What if I made the wrong choice? What if there's something I should still be considering? What if I hurt someone without realizing it? And because sensitive people tend to process things deeply, we can stay engaged with a situation long after it has ended. The conversation is over, but the mind keeps reviewing it. The decision has been made, but the mind keeps checking it. It's looking for reassurance that we made the right choice. Or you finally climb into bed after a long day, and just as your body begins to settle, your mind decides it's the perfect time to review your entire life. The moment has passed, but the nervous system is still responding as though something needs to be solved. This means your mind is trying very hard to protect you. But protection and peace aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the mind keeps protecting long after the moment has passed, and that is where overthinking becomes so exhausting. It isn't that your mind is broken, it's that your mind is using a protection strategy that may no longer be helping. One of the teachings from my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, that has stayed with me for many years is that mindfulness is a way of coming home to ourselves. I love that phrase, coming home, because it reminds me that I don't have to solve everything before I can rest. I don't have to wait until every question is answered or every uncertainty is resolved. I can simply come back to this breath, this body, this moment. In that way, mindfulness helps us practice being with life before we have all the answers. And honestly, during those 2 weeks when I was sick, I had to remind myself of that again and again. Healing wasn't happening on my schedule, but life was still unfolding and the present moment was still available to me. Because when we're overthinking, we're often not really here. We're somewhere else in yesterday, replaying, regretting, analyzing, or we're in the future, predicting, preparing, and trying to control what hasn't happened yet. But meanwhile, life is unfolding right here in this moment. And it's the only moment we can truly live in. Mindfulness doesn't ask us to stop thinking. It simply helps us notice when we've become lost in thought. And that awareness changes everything because once we notice we're lost in thought, we have a choice. We can continue following the thought, or we can gently return to the breath, to the body, to the sounds around us, to the feeling of our feet on the ground, and to what is actually happening right now. Mindfulness doesn't prevent the first arrow. Life will still bring uncertainty, discomfort, mistakes, and difficult emotions. But mindfulness helps us recognize when we're adding the second arrow, when we're no longer responding to what is happening now, but instead to a story our mind is creating about what might happen next. And when we notice that, even for just a moment, we begin to come home. So the next time you notice yourself caught in a loop, try this. Pause, take a slow breath, and ask yourself, what is my mind trying to protect me from right now? And just notice what arises with curiosity, not judgment. Maybe your mind is trying to protect you from embarrassment, rejection, conflict, the discomfort of uncertainty, or the pain of making a mistake. Then ask, is this a problem I actually need to solve right now? Or is this discomfort that I'm trying to think my way out of? Sometimes there will be something practical to do. Send the message, make the appointment, ask the question, set the boundary, or write something down so you can return to it when the time is right. And sometimes there's nothing to do in that moment except soothe your nervous system and come back to where you are. If there's nothing to do right now, gently bring your attention back to the present moment. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your breath. Look around the room. Listen to the sounds. Let your body register where you actually are. You might quietly say to yourself, this is a thought. This is fear trying to protect me. And right now, I am here and I am safe enough. You might want to write that one down. Reminding yourself, this is fear trying to protect me. And right now, I am here and I am safe enough. This simple practice won't eliminate overthinking overnight, but it can begin to change your relationship with it. And that is where real freedom starts, not by forcing the mind to be quiet, but by learning how to return when the mind has wandered too far. Overthinking is often talked about as though it's a weakness or a flaw. But I genuinely don't see it that way. I see it as a nervous system trying very hard to keep us safe, a mind working overtime to protect us from pain. The challenge is that sometimes it keeps protecting long after the danger has actually passed. And sometimes that protection itself becomes another source of our suffering. That is where mindfulness becomes so powerful. It helps us recognize when we're no longer responding to what's happening now, when we've picked up the second arrow, and it gives us a way to return to ourselves in the present moment again and again, as many times as we need to. Sometimes healing begins when we stop asking the mind to solve what can only be met with our presence. Peace doesn't come from winning an argument with uncertainty. It comes from returning to the life that's actually happening right now, not by fighting our thoughts or forcing our minds to be quiet, but by gently, repeatedly choosing to come home. One breath, one moment, one small return at a time. If you've been enjoying this series on emotional absorption, sensitivity, and nervous system resilience, and you'd like a supportive space to practice these kinds of nervous system tools more regularly, I'll share more about my Rooted Resilience membership circle in the description. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to follow the podcast so you don't miss future conversations. And if you can, take time to rate and review the podcast. It helps more people find us. Take good care of yourself. You are sensitive. You are strong. And every time you return to the present moment, you are strengthening your capacity for peace. I'll see you next time.